So the idea of running names came to me in 2017. My son Armstrong passed away from cancer in 2009, and so I picked up running because that's what he liked to do. And so I had done some running and just had done some half marathons and just done some regular races. In 2017, I was kind of experimenting with my app, and I was trying to do like a ... like to be continued, and it kind of drew a straight line. And so I thought, well, maybe I can, sketch in the streets and kind of run around and see what I can do. And some of the first names, I was trying to figure out, how to do letters and stuff. And so I would do like easy names. And just by looking at it now, obviously those are the horrible ones, but, those are the first ones that I've ever done. And so like I started running in the streets of Avoca because that's where I was from originally. And most of the sketches that I did there were diagonally. So like I would go do one and I would come back and do the other. And it came to me like in July of 2017, and then August I kind of did some names, and then September what I wanted to do was Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So what I wanted to focus on most was names of kids fighting cancer. And so with that being said, I started out on September 1st running my son's name with the word spirit. And I said, this is what I want to do this month. If anybody's got a name that they would like to see run, I will run the name. It doesn't matter diagonal or horizontal, it doesn't really matter. And so let me know. And I had a few people start reaching out to me. And so what I would do then is I would run the name and I would tag the parent or the person that gave it to me and then anybody else that had that name. So it was kind of like a domino effect. So that way they were seeing what I was doing. And if they had anybody that wanted a name, then they could reach out and suggest it to me. The purpose behind it was, first of all, to do names of those that were either fighting or have fought and lost their lives. I truly believe that every name has a story. And so if like my son passed away in 2009, it's now 2020, it's 11 years down the road, and yet here I am still telling his story because of the stuff that he went through. And other parents out there, they're going through different stuff, but similar stuff. Like you could have leukemia, or you could have like DIPG, or you have brain cancer, or any type of cancer out there. I was running for them so that way they could continue telling their story, whether the student or the child was either alive or passed on. Usually what they'll do is sometimes I'll read about it and I'll run the name. Sometimes a name is given to me, and sometimes they won't, give me the story. They'll be like, here's an 11-year-old, his name, is so-and-so, can you please run it? So I would go and run the name, and sometimes they would tell me stories, so I would have an image, and sometimes they'll send pictures, so I can envision that child while I'm running. And so it started out with children fighting cancer, and then it grew to adults fighting cancer, and then it grew to, can you run a badge number of a fallen officer? Then it came to, can you run, a phrase? Because New Zealand had some shootings a few years ago. Somebody from New Zealand reached out and said, can you run this phrase for me? And I can't pronounce it, but I can run it and spell it out in the streets the way they gave it to me. So it's kind of grew to the point where childhood cancer is my main focus. But if anybody gives me a name of somebody that they know they're struggling with, definitely that I'll run it. So Clay County right now is county number 84. We just did 4 other counties yesterday. We're actually doing Spencer today, which is in Clay County, obviously, and then we're moving it to Palo Alto later on in the day, where we're going to be running in Emmitsburg. And so the goal is to run 2 counties the rest of the week. And once we do that, then we'll be at 93 counties. And then I'll have 5 left to do in the middle of the state. And then I'll have one last one to do in Scott County, which is in eastern Iowa, which is where I live. My plan is, once I'm done with all 99 counties, is to, obviously continue to run the names, because I'll have names, to continue to run. So, I'll continue to run them in Iowa City, or like if we have a weekend off, we'll go to, a different spot like we had visited during this process, because, during this process, we've only had time to basically camp overnight. So my goal is to, like during the weekends where it's nice out, we'll go travel back to some of these towns, camp there, run in the towns a couple times, kind of get a feel for that town, and then go back home. But to just continue to raise awareness from childhood cancer awareness, and to acknowledge the fact that every name has a story. And the thing is that just because your son passed away from cancer or your daughter passed away from cancer doesn't mean it's the end of the story. You know, people need to know that, you know, what struggles they went through, you know, what things did their story have that may be similar to somebody else. And maybe that story can help another individual be like, hey, you know, we did so much, you know, radiation and chemo, whereas you could do maybe less radiation or less chemo and maybe save your child that, you know, obviously mine, the tumors just goes too fast. If anybody wants to suggest a name or would like to see something run in the streets, whether it's in Spencer, whether it's, you know, wherever it is, they can go to runforarmstrong.com and submit the name that way. Obviously, there's some towns that are bigger than others. So like here in Spencer, I can do up to an 8-letter name, whereas some towns that we did yesterday, we only had room for 4 and 5 letters. So it all depends on the town and the name where we can squeeze it in.